And we are back for part 2 of the Flames and Predators Customer Experience Survey.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I'm your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me today as we wrap up this Nashville Predators, Calgary Flames rebuild discussion, and with my two good friends, Bryan Bastin and Jeff Middleton of On the Forecheck, Flames Nation, and a million other websites. But before we dive into that, make sure you are subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you're getting your podcasts, and of course on YouTube as well. It's free. It's a great way to, still get your Flames content through the summer. And of course, we are back to 5 episodes a week once the season rolls around. So let us dive right into it. Oh, now it's time to talk about the core.
Mm-hmm.
Are we confident with is the current core and the prospect pool enough to build around? Is that it?
I'm going to say agree, and I feel a little more strongly about that. I think because, and I'm going to say this for 2 reasons, and 2 reasons only, and that's Roman Josi and Juuse Saros. Not just because Roman Josi, obviously he's got 5 more years left on his deal. He's gotten better each season, it feels like, over the last 3 years. He's a guy that I think is barring any health problems, I think he's going to be good for a long time. He's a guy, we could very easily see, talking about a 1-year deal at the end of his deal to bring him back, just to see if he wants to keep going in 5 years. And then Juuse Saros, and it's not just Juuse Saros because they seem to be committed to him at least for next season. But there's, Kevin Lankinen had a strong enough season. They gave him another chance, and I think he's a pretty fine backup, to be honest. And then there's Yaroslav Askarov, who seems to be doing extremely well. So there is that. The forwards, I feel better about the forward pool than I have in several years, just for the fact that we've seen these guys get NHL time, which I think has been a massive benefit for the Predators. Like Jeff said, I mean, we've seen almost full seasons from guys like Tomasino, Cody Glass, Luke Evangelista, Juuso Parssinen. We've got guys that are a little bit older, like Tommy Novak, who have come in and been excellent. Mark Jankowski, older guys, AHL guys, but have come in and done well. And I think those will be guys that'll be great for what this roster needs to be. I think they're going to not be a bottom dwelling team next season, but they're going to be close. But I think their forward group, I feel pretty excited about. I said before, defensively, it's not good. You've got your guys that are under the age of 30 that you're leaning on, are Carrier and Fabro, who are guys who should be, what you're building the future of defense core. But then there's Jeremy Lauzon on a contract I will never understand. And below that, there's not much left. I mean, it's a little bare.
It's
and
a good sign.
So, I mean, I'm going to say agree, just for the fact that goaltending's taken care of. I think forwards are in a good spot, but defensively is just kind of awful. So I'm going to put agree, just 2 out of the 3.
I'm going to say disagree, just because the goal allegedly is to get younger. And I feel like there are just too many moving parts right now for this to be any sort of established core. I mean, you have Jakob Markstrom for another 2 years, and then Dustin Wolf is poised to take over, which is great. I think that's going to be a wonderful transition there. I feel better about the defensive group than I do really the forwards. I think that the defense is more established and we know what we're going to get with them. Rasmus Andersson and Mackenzie Weegar are really 2 fantastic defensemen. You have Oliver Shillington coming back, and he had an absolute fantastic season 2 years ago. And Chris Tanev, hopefully he's healthy and use the summer to rest up. He can still play really well, and he holds the penalty kill together.
Yeah, I think if the question is if it's a good core for the rebuild, for the Flames, I'm not sure I agree with that. I'd say that, if Elias Lindholm ends up coming back and they don't spend an exorbitant amount of money on his contract, I'd say that they have a pretty good, core of guys in that forward group. And even their defense group, I think, is one of the best in the league. But yeah, I'm not sure if it's for a rebuild. I don't think I agree with that. Just because, like you said, there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of guys that are going to be older. There's not a ton of spots for young guys to come in and fill holes, which is, what a rebuild's about. You have these guys that are ready for NHL action, and then you have to give them a spot on the roster for enough time for them to get, acclimated. For the Preds, I'd say, yeah. I mean, I think most of their core right now, outside of, a Roman Josi and Juuse Saros, like Brian said, is young players. Like, Filip Forsberg is in the forward group. Johansson and Duchene are gone. You have Colton Sissons there. You have Jakob Trenin. But other than those guys, like, I don't know if I could tell you a true, like, established member of that forward group that hasn't, that's below the age, or that's above the age of like 26 or whatever. Like, they have some guys that are young and filling up the top roster spots, and that's important in this kind of rebuild towards the top world that we live in.
I have a question for you, Jeff, and I can't believe I haven't asked you this yet this offseason, but
yes,
I think Roman Josi and Juuse Saros will be, immediate plans in the next 2 years, and to be something that you could build around if things get turned around. What do you think about Filip Forsberg, though? Do you think that he's around by the time this team is competitive again?
I think so. I mean, I think part of it's off ice, right? Like, I think, he has a life here. He has, a wife that does, songwriting and country music and all this stuff, but also, the fact that he's been here, he's signed, an 8-year deal or however long for, like, it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, he has made it clear that he wants to be here through this retool, rebuild, reset, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's important. I think that, I don't think that goes for granted with Barry Trotz. I think he's a guy that's kind of all about that. And I think Filip Forsberg plays a style of game where, he's a power forward. He's not going to blow by you with his speed. He's not, he's not risking a ton with his play style. I think that he's, you're not going to see him in the next 4 years be completely blown out or whatever. And he's still, was he 26, 27? Like
28.
He's okay, 28. He's in the middle of his prime years. So, as much as it's an interesting question, I feel like there's a lot of factors pointing towards him being around when they're competitive. I think the one question that you have to ask, kind of stemming from that, is whether or not his injury history is going to play a part in kind of what he does down the road. Like, if he's injured for the next 4 years, I think we have a serious conversation about whether or not he's on this team, because there are going to be people, or, there's going to be general managers and teams that want his services, injured or not.
Right.
But yeah, I think his injuries would be the biggest. I wouldn't doubt if he was on this team for the rest of his contract, but I think, if we're 4 or 5 years down the line and he's been injured for 3-4 for all of those years, or like even like a quarter or 3/4 of them, I think there's a serious question to be asked about, whether or not his future on this team is through the rest of his NHL career or not.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, that's fair, I would say. Filip Forsberg, if you would love to come to Calgary, we can talk for you. Don't worry about it. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today here on Locked On Flames. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200. That's right, just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting from everything from money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run. Just bet Shohei Ohtani, usually the over on Garrett Cole strikeouts, and you got yourself a nice, few bucks there, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. That's one of my favorite parts about the app. So there is no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Can this team win their division in the next 3 years?
Disagree.
Ooh.
I have some faith in I have some faith in some of the prospects, and I think that again, goaltending can mask a lot of things, at least as Predators fans have seen for the last 3 years. But they're not going to be competitive, with the Colorados. Like Minnesota, I think is going to be on top of the Central for the next 2 to 3 seasons. I don't have a ton of faith. Dallas just getting better. It seems like, there's Colorado, Dallas. That's where Duchene and Johansson went. Minnesota has gotten better. It's going to be really difficult. I don't think that St. Louis is going to be necessarily a threat anytime soon, but in
Chicago. I was going to say Chicago.
But
that's the big one.
I don't know that I think Nashville is set up to be, I feel like they can probably make it into the playoffs as a, maybe not even a wild card, maybe finish third in the division. I think they could have that type of talent by 3 years from now to do that, but they're not going to be contending. It's not going to be a race in the final week to see if Nashville wins the Central outright in the regular season. I just don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think the Flames, it's very unlikely, I would say. I think that, obviously Vegas is right there, Edmonton, and you have the Kraken getting better. The Pacific Division is noted as, kind of the weakest division in the league, but because so many of them have just bottomed out, the Ducks, the Sharks, even the Kings they did a little rebuild, retool thing. They're getting more competitive slowly.
Mm-hmm. I still can't believe that they had 104 points last season. That's still, that every time I see it, that blows my mind that they finished that well.
So I think it would take a lot of things to go wrong. Or
yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that the Flames have going for them is that the Pacific Division can fluctuate every year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think, I don't think they're going to be good enough to win the division on paper, but if they have some career years and some guys on some other teams that are big pieces of those don't have those very good years, like I think there's a shot that they could be in contention for it. But just kind of speaking from an on paper point of view, I think the Kings are going to be the top of this division. The Kings and the Knights, I think they're going to be the top of this division for years to come. I think, like you said, Seattle's going to be good. I could see Anaheim working their way into the conversation by year 3, but I don't think they're going to get up there for sure. But yeah, I think, the Central's going to be the hardest one. The Preds, even with this young core, unless their players have years that they had in 2021-22, where, Filip Forsberg scoring 40 goals, Luke Evangelista scoring 40 goals. I just don't see it. Or Philip Tomasino scores 40 goals. I just don't see it happening. You have everybody's getting better around them, and they've taken steps to kind of keep up with that, but they're just they're a couple steps behind as of now.
I'm surprised you said that you think that the Predators, the Central, is going to be harder for a team to win, for Nashville to win in the Central than Calgary in the Pacific. I mean, I would say if you don't take into account the teams themselves, but just the division, I would have told you it'd be harder to win in the Pacific. Honestly, I think Seattle's going to be good, very, very good.
I have a hard time. We've seen how good the Central Division is, and it's, you point, I think Minnesota is going to be the top of that for, years. They're a top 3 team in the division, or at least close to it pretty consistently. And they still have a top 5 prospect pool in the entire league. These guys that, I think the top of the Pacific will not be as good as the top of the Central. I think that's part of where that comes from. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I'm I'm not afraid to be wrong there, but it's just I think just how much these two divisions, especially the Pacific, kind of moves up and down, and there's no really telling. I think like they're like Jess said, the Pacific is considered the worst division in the West, and arguably the NHL. So it's just it's a lot of I think it's a lot of moving parts, and I think a lot of it depends on guys getting hot at the right time. I think if Dustin Wolf gets hot at the right time, and they have these young guys that have played a year or two, by year 3, I mean, who knows?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty, so let's see. What is the biggest question here on August 1st when this episode airs?
I mean, I think, I don't think there's going to be much roster changes. I mean, I think they may sign some more AHL guys, but I think they may be even set there. Which, speaking of AHL, I know I've said this in the past, but I think right now Nashville, their biggest decision or non-decision, depending on how it works out, is, who is going to coach the Milwaukee Admirals if Carl Taylor is not the head coach next season? And Carl Taylor was, one of the best, if not the best coach in the AHL for the past 2 seasons. His coaching staff has done a tremendous job. I mean, we talk a lot about how Nashville had so many injury problems last year, but, they had to take players from somewhere. So, the injury problems the Preds had turned into a basic, nightmare for the AHL because they were pulling in, they didn't have an ECHL affiliate. They were getting lots of guys on ATOs, and they still managed to get into the playoffs and do pretty well, considering all things considered. So Carl Taylor was one of the top 3 guys considered for the job. And I think that, I understand why they would have gone with Brunette. I think that they might have made that decision with the expectation that Carl Taylor would be hired somewhere. Now, I'm very surprised he hasn't been picked up yet. I think he was rumored to go speak with like Dallas to be on their staff, I believe it was, but that was a month ago or so, and haven't heard anything. So, I mean, it's great if they think that they're going to have Carl Taylor there, but I don't think there's going to be a more important time for Nashville in Milwaukee than maybe these next 2 years. So if Carl Taylor does leave, because I don't think he's going to sit around for 3 years and wait to see if the Predators job opens again. They've got to figure out who they're going to put in charge of development, because, this is the most confident I felt in Nashville's development, especially on forwards in some time. And I think it's going to be really, really important. So yeah, it's not a Predators answer, but it's going to be Carl Taylor.
And especially right now, like, you want your development, I mean, always to kind of be at a strong point, but you really want someone that is well suited for that position to be coaching these guys. For the Flames, when is anything going to happen? Who's moving? When? Who, what, when, where, why? That's really what it feels like. What happens at the trade deadline if none of these guys have been moved? What do we do? It just feels like a bunch of hypotheticals because there's just no answers.
My answer to the Preds would have been the same as Brian's. I think it would have been the same for the Flames. I think, I would have gone a little bit more specific with the Flames and, what is the future for Elias Lindholm and Michael Backlund? Because those are 2 guys that they wanted to bring back long-term I guess for Backlund, not long-term, but, a few years. But, they're guys that they wanted to have stuck around. They wanted Backlund to be a captain or be the captain. And we just haven't heard anything. It's been rumor after rumor after rumor, and there's nothing happening right now. It just seems like all of the news is surrounding players that are not those names. We know that Hanifin wants out. We don't know, kind of what that deal is, but that's not the concern. The concern is what is the future for these guys, and what's the future for the lineup if these guys decide not to come back.
We'll be waiting. We'll be here. Don't worry. Craig, we got all summer. It's already August, but what's been the biggest head scratcher this off season?
At the risk of repeating myself, I think the way the Duchene move was handled. Again, I mean, it's just, if you're going to if buying out is like the only option you have, like, why not just wait one more year and see? Because it's just, there's a ton of there's a ton of things. I mean, if you look at the next 2 years, what Nashville is on the books, so they've got 4 players with dead money for the next 2 years. They have retained salary on Ryan Johansson and Matthias Ekholm, which Matthias Ekholm is just $250,000, so it's not a big deal. But then you also have to remember that the other two of David Poyle's big center acquisitions over the last 5 years, Matt Duchene and Kyle Turris, are also getting paid over the next 2 years. So they're going to be paying to those 4 players $8.7 million next season, 11.7 the season after that, and then they'll be at $9 million a year after that. So I understand that like they were going to get a break this next season with Duchene, and they're going to have to pay him his full deal. But man, they've really put themselves in a hard spot, because then there's also the big elephant in the room is how much longer is Shea Webber going to put off his retirement. And unless something changes, which I don't know how they're going to make that argument now. I think that if they were going to make the whole argument about getting rid of the cap penalty from those contracts, Poyle would have been the one to do it, to push for that. But now looking at it, I believe let's see, I'm trying to think. I think in the next, he's got 3 years left on the deal. And so if he retires, let me see, I've got the numbers here somewhere. He retired in, because nobody else has to eat much of that deal, but he could be on the books for Nashville until 2030 because of the new rules where, if he retires a year before the end of his contract, he's on Nashville's books for $24 million, and that's
fun times, right? Fun times.
And so I know a lot of people are saying there's no way that they're going to enforce that on Nashville, or Shea Webber is going to continue to push, or is going to continue to take the deals that he's on and just, do whatever it is he's doing out there. But I mean, he's $7.8 million. He's sitting on Arizona to get him above the salary floor. I mean, it's basically because of the new rule, they're not going to make them pay $24 million in 1 year, but it's going to be basically $7.8 million in that case until that balance is due up. So I mean, again, if you look at that, the combination of those salaries, I mean, you're looking anywhere from $15 to $22 million to maybe even more over the next 3 years. And so because of this, the Duchene and Johansson situations, not to mention still buying out Kyle Turris, is that you're almost depriving yourself 2 roster spots from the jump. And these, I know you want to say that you're going to replace these guys all with younger players, cheaper players, but sure would be nice to have maybe just one of those hits off the books. But unfortunately, they're going to be paying a lot of money to guys who aren't Nashville Predators over the next 3 years.
And like we mentioned earlier, with the cap the way that it is, you can't afford to be eating double-digit dead cap space.
Yeah.
For the Flames, oh gosh, I guess the biggest head scratcher would be, Backlund and Lindholm's kind of lack of answers at this point. For me, I think at this point in the summer, I would have expected at least an answer from one of them.
Anything.
Truly, just some sort of signs of interest in hockey, other than I love the baby pictures, love the family pictures, but we got a business to run here. I got a podcast. We gotta talk about something, right? But I guess just kind of, I don't know if it's indecisiveness, but the last I heard, Lindholm still hadn't made a decision.
Yeah, I think it was either that, or I think the one that was the most confusing to me was not committing to a backup goaltender.
Yeah,
I think that one was, and I understand why, Wolf, they want Wolf to kind of be in the AHL. I think it's because he's waiver exempt on his contract for this year, or something specific in the the fine print. But I think that part to me was really? You see this guy, he's the best goalie in the AHL. He wins he's the MVP of the AHL. He wins the best goalie award in the AHL. He's like Kobe Bryant with his NBA trophies. He's got he's got the picture with his arms outspread, and he's just they're all the way out there, and it's just a bunch of them. That's Dustin Wolf from last year. And part of me is I understand why, but why would you, after last season, why would you deprive yourself of a goalie that has made himself, he's proven to be one of the top young goaltenders, if not the top young goaltender in the entire NHL, the entire league. Like, you struggled last year. Goaltending was arguably your biggest problem last year. And you're not getting rid of Jakob Markstrom, but Dan Vladar, he's a backup goalie. Like, a team will want him. He's a serviceable goaltender. I don't think Dan Vladar is a bad goalie, but you have a guy who's won 50 plus games in the AHL last year, and you're not gonna try him out because he's waiver exempt. I don't get that. And I haven't, since that report came out, I was like, really? That has probably been the biggest one for me.
Thank you, everyone, for hanging around with us as we wrap up part 2 of this analysis of the Predators and how they're kind of steps ahead of the Flames in terms of their rebuild. And I hope that you all are enjoying it. Yeah, no, I can't. There's so much to unpack with the Calgary Flames. Alrighty, speaking of goaltending, describe the goaltending in one word.
Enviable. I think Nashville has a wonderful setup at goaltender.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think that there's not many teams. You guys, you look and, all respect to Linus Ullmark, who won the Vezina. You don't see him putting up those types of numbers for 2 more years.
Never.
Sorokin, I could very well see that. Hellebuyck, depending on where he goes and what he's doing, but I think Winnipeg's a team that's going to be pretty bad in the next couple of years, probably sooner rather than later. But then you've got Juuse Saros, a guy that has continued to carry the Predators through these seasons, took over basically flawlessly from Pekka Rinne. All those doubts of maybe him being able to handle the load were just completely not non-factor. I mean, he's been tremendous. Never, since I think since his first full season as a backup in the NHL, he's never had a save percentage under 91.5%. I mean, he should have been a Vezina finalist last year. He's going to continue to be a Vezina finalist. He's still young compared to a lot of his peers. And then you've got Yaroslav.
He's going to make a boatload of money.
And he's going to make a whole boatload of money. So yeah, enviable, because they've got 2 years left on Saros, who's getting $5 million right now. So I mean, that's chump change. Askarov has 2 more years left of his ELC, which gives you plenty of time to let him play in the AHL this season somewhat, maybe get him 5 or 6 games. Yeah. And then Lankinen's fine. He's a backup goaltender. I mean, it's just, I think this is the situation. If you're going to do this rebuild, having a plan and goal and a current plan, because Saros could be a guy like Rinne who plays for another 7 years. So who knows? But I think they've got I'm glad they didn't get rid of either of those players, unless they were going to be able to go and snag a top 5 pick or something, just for the fact that I think they're set up well for success with these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's the perfect word. And just any team would love to have Juuse Saros. For the Flames, I'm going to go with unpredictable. There is truly no way to predict and really measure goaltending expectations, I guess, really, other than goals above expected. But that's not really, or saves above, whatever. But to me, Jakob Markstrom is hit or miss, or he's just going to do what he did last year and just give us nightmare after nightmare, do a slip and slide through the neutral zone because he wants to leave his crease, play the puck. It's just a very confusing situation, because I know that he was hard on himself. I'm sure there were so many factors, from him being an expectant father to the situation in the Flames locker room. What are we getting? We don't know. What are we getting with Vladar, and what are we doing with Wolf?
Yeah, I think for the Preds, my word would be deep, and my word for the Flames would just be recovery. Because one, as Brian talked about, the Preds have it set up. They got what they need right now. Juuse Saros is cheap, Kevin Lankinen is good enough, and Yaroslav Askarov is the future. And for the Flames, they need a big bounce back this year. Like they need it to be better. And that's kind of, what I think it's easy to miss that because it's, goaltending is a voodoo. Like it's just magic. You don't know what's going to happen. It's unpredictable, but they, it was awful last year. And Jacob Markstrom did get better. I mean, he had some good performances towards the end of the year, but it can't happen like that. Yeah, it's too late at that point. He was lucky that they were fighting for a playoff spot at that point because he was the reason that they weren't earlier. And he knew that. Like I think, like you said, he was very hard on himself, which, respect to him for that. But yeah, recovery is probably the best thing that I can think of for that.
Now, I mean, I guess we technically kind of just answered this, but how big of a concern is the goaltending?
Can I answer for both teams?
Yeah.
Okay, Nashville, it's not. Calgary. So, but I want to break this down because I've thought a lot about Calgary's situation. And so there's a lot of similarities in that Markstrom is 1 year out of having, after having a really fantastic year a couple years back. And I think that I think he's going to be a good player. I don't think he's going to be what we saw this year. And, you could look at Lankinen and Vladar, and see like which one is going to be. I mean, Lankinen had an incredible season compared to, Vladar, but it's like you have a veteran who you think is going to be a top 5, top 10 goaltender in NHL. That's the expectation. Then you've got a backup who's a serviceable backup. Sure. And then you come down to the two best goaltenders in the AHL with Askarov and Wolf. And I think Wolf deserved every single award he got this season. But the difference to me is he's only got 1 year left on his deal. So if you are Calgary, you've got 1 year, this guy at $800,000 or whatever it is. And you're not married to Vladar, really. You're not. Like, there's no reason really to keep him around or like to do that. So why not put him in there, get Wolf in there and have him play 20, 25 games as the backup. See if he can handle it. You're going to be paying a lot of money next season, I think, for a guy like Wolf. Even if he plays, I would say 80% of his games in the AHL, you're still going to be giving him a good chunk of money. And I don't think that he's going to step in and come into Calgary next season and, put on a performance worthy of him getting a whole lot of money anyway, like more money than what he would get, if he just stuck in the AHL, and you've got this guy cheap. You have a chance that this team is not going to be relying on Wolf to be getting them into the playoffs next season. So why not give him that? Askarov, on the other hand, they've got 2 years left. Saros has 2 years left. Let Askarov get more North American time in the AHL. Get him Milwaukee, get him a few more games than last season. But then you've got the final year, in 2 seasons from now, where it's Saros and Askarov both on the last years of their deal. Put them both. There's your tandem in the NHL, and you go from there. Calgary just doesn't have that time with Wolf because he's going to cost money to re-sign. He's a guy who I've watched him a lot in the AHL this season. He's going to be an AHL goaltender for a while, and I don't think that he's got too much hype coming up for him because of all his awards. He's the real deal, and I think that they would be a lot better off to not waste a year just in case Vladar is kind of good, and like put Wolf out there, put people in the seats and put him out there because he's an exciting goaltender. He's a great prospect. Put him out there.
100% agree. Alrighty. What are we looking forward to the most? Some positivity.
Yeah. Okay, I'll say there's 3 things. I'm very excited to see what the Andrew Brunette system looks like. I know that we may not know what that looks like until like maybe the last quarter of the season at this year. And, it's not going to be the personnel he wants. So who knows, but I want to see if there's difference. I want to see if this team becomes less of a hard checking, forechecking team who is relying on a lot of hitting and size. And, are they going to be a speed team? Because I think Nashville has a lot of players that would fit that. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see, just more time, a lot of these young guys. I think that, seeing guys like, Alexander Carrier, who I think he has turned around to he can be a first pair defenseman, if things go well for him. And I think he's been trending in the right direction. I want to see Tom Messino and Evangelista, Cody Glass. I think these guys are only going to get better with each year. And so watching the young guys is going to be super fun. And, last year we had this pretty much all of last season where it was a whole lot of young guys. So it was fun, but it's low expectations, just to be honest, because, there's all this pressure. There was all this, no matter what, how many people were saying Nashville's not going to succeed. They need to go ahead and, hit the reset button. They were still good enough team to be, finish a point back from Calgary and just a handful of points out of the playoffs. So, I don't think that's going to be an issue now. I think if they start making a run towards the playoffs and don't make it, it's going to be more about like, oh, people were excited because it's like, are these guys actually going to pull this off and sneak in on their, in a year that's not been great, as opposed to, I cannot believe they just missed the playoffs. And so I think it's going to be a lot more fun. I think there's going to be a lot of new faces. You're going to see who on this team becomes the faces of the team for the fans. And I don't know, it's nice to see a full restart and a rebuild, and you still got a handful of your, top 5 in their position players, hanging around. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. And, I think Nashville is a fun team, regardless of really if it's the playoffs or a regular season game. The fans make Bridgestone Arena a fantastic place to watch a hockey game. For the Flames, I'm looking forward to this fresh start. There is nothing this team needed more than last season to just end. It could have ended in February, even January, and that would have been fine. They needed to get out of their own heads, get out of their own way, and really sit with themselves and really just do all the mental work that they had to do to never crawl into that spot ever again. And I think a lot of that wasn't going to happen until the end of the season when you had to fire Daryl Sutter. You had to. There was no way you were going to have a team if you kept him. So I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited to see what Ryan Huska does. And I think really I'm excited for Jonathan Huberdeau to hopefully have a bounce back year. And I'm really looking forward to Jakob Pelletier's hopefully full season in the NHL.
Yeah, my 2 answers were going to be Jonathan Huberdeau and Jakob Pelletier. More Jakob Pelletier, I think, now that I think about it, just because he went through so much crap last year, just on and off the ice, just with Sutter and all that. Like, I really want him to just come out and just light the league on fire. I would love nothing more than that. Just because he seems like a great kid, and I think part of it's also, Huberdeau has kind of taken him under his wing. Same thing he did to, he did that to Matt Coronato too at the end of the year when Coronato came up and played a game. But yeah, I think those 2 are going to be the two to watch. And obviously the goaltending stuff, but that's more of like an issue that needs to be fixed. And I'm more like, I trust these 2 to bounce back and really kind of set the standard for what the Flames forwards needs to be.
Definitely. And to close it out, who do you hope proves you wrong?
Sorry, I want Jeff to answer this one first.
Ooh.
Oh boy. All right. Who I hope proves me wrong for the Preds. I hope Luke Shen proves me wrong. I do, like, I seriously do. I think he would be, I'm not going to say he'd be like one of the most pivotal. I don't think him being great would be whether or not the Preds make it into the playoffs or not. Or, how, I don't think he's like a super influential player, but, I would very much like if they signed him to the deal that they did, and he came out and, proved himself to be a $3 million player. I think, I'd be all right with that. I'm not complaining. I would love nothing more than that, for him to kind of be the, stay at home, I'm going to beat the crap out of you defenseman, and him not be like a super black hole in the defensive or offensive zones. I'm trying to think for the Flames, because there's not a ton of guys that can really, prove me wrong after last year. I think,
they did that.
They all underperformed, and I'm expecting most of them to bounce back. I think he'll be fine.
Yeah.
I don't think last year was his best year. I thought he had some moments where he was awful, but didn't really think that he was, he's not, in the sense that prove me wrong. I don't think that he would prove me wrong necessarily. He'd just kind of be a I consider him a bounce back candidate. I'm trying to think. There's not a ton of guys that I like really doubt on this team. It's more like, can they bounce back instead of will they prove me wrong? I guess Dan Vladar, I mean,
Yeah.
if he comes out and lights the world on fire, then by all means, I guess that would be my answer, I guess.
We'll revisit the tape when that happens. I guess for me, I hope it's Craig Conroy. I hope he does.
There you go. Okay, I like that one.
I hope he comes in guns a-blazing, does something, because I'm getting tired. And I'm sure some of the players are like, they don't know what this roster might look like. They don't know if it's even going to look like that by the deadline. What are you putting out there that's any different from last year that's going to make you a playoff team? Or they want to be competitors, they want to be contenders. What are you doing to make yourself a contender? Because you haven't done anything besides trade your top goal scorer from last year. So
yeah, well, I think for me, it's going to be less a player on the team because, again, looking at the roster, there's not, you could say somebody and joke around. Like I obviously left low-hanging fruit to you with Shen. I don't care. I don't care that much about Shen just because I don't think.
No, I mean, I just
but I but
it's
I think
fun. It's
the player I want to prove me wrong is not a Predator anymore, and that's going to be Matt Duchene, because
I agree with that.
I think he's going to put up incredible numbers next season, whether he's going to put up good numbers if he was with Nashville, but I think he's going to really, really thrive, now. And I don't know, like, it's going to hurt because, he was the white whale for Poyle for so long. And I would argue that the Matt Duchene experiment has gone extremely well for Nashville.
I would also agree with that.
Outside of one season, but I mean, he's got a ton of Nashville records now, and I don't agree or believe in any of the like culture issue things that have been bandied about him. Just because I've seen him in the locker room, I've seen him taking young players under his wing, spending time with them, on morning skate. So yeah, I mean, I hope he proves me wrong, I guess, and doesn't have that great of a year, which feels really mean to say, but I think it would make me feel better about it. Yeah, I know you are. But I mean, you're going to be paying him a lot of his money anyways over the next few years. Like, they could have done, just could hold on to him one more year. And I don't know. I hope he proves me wrong, but I don't see him not thriving in Dallas. He was exactly right when he said he's not used to being on these teams like this, contending teams. And he's right. There's not a lie said by that man. Like, Dallas is in a position that Nashville has not been since maybe the first year that Duchene came in. So yeah, that's who I hope proves me wrong, I guess.
I hope Filip Tomasino proves a bunch of people wrong this year.
Yes, I can understand that too.
Well, that does it for us today on Locked On Flames. And where can everyone find your work, Brian?
On the Forecheck there, I'm an editor, writer, and game day coverage is, of course, when that starts back up. Renegades of Puck, another thing that Jeff and I are part of, and we do those during the season, every night after every game. Those videos get posted and summaries with Charlie Saunier. So make sure you guys check out on those on YouTube. And then another thing that, again, Jeff and I are both part of is the Chase Thomas podcast, where we do the Preds Power Hour, which we're deep into off season mode. We just rescheduled tonight's recording, so I was like, I've got nothing, Chase. Nothing has happened at all. So you can find us there. So yeah, I mean, as far as podcasting, and then I'm gonna give it up to Jeff to list the 30 places he writes for.
Yeah, we need a whole nother segment just for that. We'll just film.
Yeah, so it's a fair amount. Yeah. So like Brian said, Chase Thomas podcast, Renegades of Puck. We do those together. I do Renegades of Puck a little less than Brian. He does the day-to-day stuff. I'll do the bigger stuff. But and then on the Forecheck with Brian as well. Just a writer there, throwing in my thoughts every once in a while. And then Flames Nation and the Nation Network work over there, doing analysis, number stuff, prospect stuff, kind of the whole thing. Got some stuff in the works for another site that still can't reveal totally yet. And then do a little baseball work on the side at Pinstripe Alley, writing about the Yankees. So fun times.
Well, there you have it. Thank you both for joining me today. As again, we answer the questions that our general managers can't.
Yeah.
So until next time, enjoy the rest of your summer. Stay safe, stay hydrated, wear sunscreen, and turn your tweet notifications on for Elliot Fried.